All right, good evening, Dominica. Welcome to another edition of Youth Camera Action in collaboration with Mapping 2K4. Tonight we have some very interesting guests in studio with us to discuss one very important meeting that was held in Antigua some weeks back. That was the Caribbean region leg of the Commonwealth Youth Ministers meeting. Tonight in studios we have to discuss with us our female CARICOM Youth Ambassador from my immediate left. We have Chief Youth Development Officer, Mr. John Roach, and our male CARICOM Youth Ambassador, Dieon Anselm. And as I mentioned before, we have quite an interesting topic. We have a full hour ahead of us, packed program. And we expect to hear some interesting comments on policy making and policy development as it relates to youth empowerment and sustainable development, of course. We'll hear from Mr. Roach on his experience as the Chief Youth Development Officer. He played a key role in leading our delegation of young people to Antigua in April. That meeting was held on April 28th to 30th. Mr. Anselm and Ms. Jno-Baptist will give us some short comments when we come back with Youth Camera Action. Stay tuned, please.
It's movies, entertainment, sports, news, travel, cuisine, and arts. Pink TV is here. With over 80 great channels to choose from to satisfy your entertainment needs no matter what. Watch all your pay-per-view programs with ease. Tier services included Fox Soccer Plus, Speed TV, and Tennis. Watch quality local programming like the Channel 5 News and Ion Sports, all from the comfort of your home in full digital and HD. The thrill, the scare, and the emotion. Mapping 2K4 Pink TV, bringing value home because life is better with Mapping.
Welcome back, viewers. I'm Shanon John, your host for tonight, and as I mentioned before, we have some very exciting hosts, some very exciting guests, with us tonight. And we'll probably start the ball rolling with our lady in studio. Ms. Kerahia Jno-Baptist, our female CARICOM Youth Ambassador. Kerahia, just give us, in your own brief words, what was the experience like at the Commonwealth Youth Ministers meeting that was held in April, that was last month, Just talk to us a little about that, please.
Okay, basically the point of the Youth Ministers meeting and their whole theme was youth participating in Commonwealth in decision making for young people, like you said, for empowerment and for sustainable development. And that is what they did. They had youth ministers, youth leaders, basically the whole arena of people who assist in youth policy making, and that was what we came for. And it was a great experience, I must say, because I came as a Dominican to give recommendation on behalf of my country on what we as a country and we as a region need as young people. That was basically it for us.
Perfect. And Mr. Anselm, did you have that same experience?
Yes, I indeed had a wonderful experience at that trip in Antigua. It was a pleasure seeing youth who are passionate about youth development like myself there, to share on the different the youth initiatives taking place in their country and to give input on how we can move forward as a region in terms of youth development.
Perfect, perfect. Mr. Roach, as Chief Youth Development Officer, I mean, I'm pretty sure you could probably speak on behalf of our Honorable Minister tonight as well. And I'm pretty sure she's watching, so we say good night to Mrs. Charles. She always gives us good reviews. But Mr. Roach, I mean, coming from that meeting, we heard our young people mention policy implementation, policy ideas, and youth empowerment. As Youth Development Officer, I mean, what did you take from that meeting in April?
Well, let me say it was the very first time that we had the Youth Minister, the Chief Youth Development Officer, and the two CARICOM Youth Ambassadors at such a very important regional meeting. And in fact, I remember trying to get a fifth person to be on the delegation, trying to get the President of the National Youth Council, that's Senator Benoit, to be part of the delegation because of the importance of the meeting. The meeting was a follow-up meeting coming up from the 8th Commonwealth Youth Ministers meeting, which was held in 2013. And based on recommendations that were made from this very important Commonwealth Youth Ministers meeting, the Commonwealth Secretariat felt that it's important to meet the various Commonwealth groupings on a regional level to deliberate on the 8th Commonwealth Youth Ministers meeting, as well as in preparation for the 9th Commonwealth Youth Ministers meeting, to hear from various stakeholders. Okay. And Antigua accepted to host the regional meeting. It included all the Caribbean countries that are Commonwealth countries, as well as Canada. Okay. We also had an observer. Suriname also came as an observer. And I think the meeting is a very timely meeting. It's a very timely meeting because what you find is happening is that we are coming to the end of the Millennium Development Goal, which ends basically on the 31st of December 2015. So we have a few months remaining for the Millennium Development Goal. And what the Commonwealth Secretariat seeks to do is the fact that a number of those goals and the objectives under various goals were not achieved and will not be achieved by the end of the year 2015. What is in stock, particularly for young people, since the young people constitute a very high percentage of the world population. And we're talking about over 60%.
Yeah.
And we're at an age where young people are basically driving what we refer to as the new or emerging economy. And if we are to empower that portion of the population, we need to position them to take advantage of the opportunities that will come. So a lot of the discussion focus on various issues such as health and employment and enterprise development and youth participation. In fact, the theme for the meeting was youth participation at the heart of national development. And there was a separate meeting where all the young people from the region met to deliberate and made a number of recommendations, which we will discuss later this evening, to the Commonwealth Youth Ministers meeting, and was presented to the Commonwealth Youth Ministers, and got some feedback from them in terms of they endorsing those recommendations. My role at this meeting was basically to provide technical support to the minister, because the meeting is really for the ministers to hear from the young people.
Right.
And a number of directors of youth. In Dominica, we say Chief Youth Development Officer. In the other countries, they say Director of Youth.
Interesting.
Basically to hear from them and to provide technical support to the minister, and to make recommendations ourselves based on our experience as technicians in the field of youth work. So it was a worthwhile meeting, and we are hoping also what will come out of this very important meeting is a review of the national youth policy for Dominica. We have a policy that is 11 years old now, and I mean, you can just just imagine the big difference that has taken place. We had, it's like over 10 years, we also had our census. So you see, 11 years that means
It's a
time for us to
long
review
time.
the national youth policy. So it was a time limited.
Perfect, wonderful. And I see in a document that you forwarded to me prior to this show, Mr. Roach, that the ministers agreed to advocate for the inclusion of some targets, right? And as you mentioned, participation of young people. One of those targets are to ensure that young people have opportunities for sustained participation. Sustained participation, I like that word especially, Ownership and leadership in local, regional, international mechanisms to prevent, manage and resolve conflict and maintain peace. Now, we know of what's going on around us, of course. I mean, it's no secret. Our young people are part and parcel of what's going on where crime and violence is concerned and where conflicts are concerned. And probably I'd like to hear a few words from our youth ambassadors, particularly our male ambassadors, not to be in any way sexist or gender imbalanced, but it's no secret that our young men do tend to grab the shorter end of that stick where conflict is concerned. Mr. Anselm, what, in your own words, what would you like to see where youth participation, young men's participation in society and keeping conflict and so on is concerned? What would you like to see for our young men?
Well, what I would basically like to see is our young men take up a more of a positive role in society and to be role models to young men who are growing up, because lately we see that mostly young men are involved in gangs, drugs and violence. So we like to see a turnaround and them getting involved in more positive activities that will lead to our youth being more positive in the long term.
Perfect, perfect. And another objective I saw there was equal access for young women to all employment opportunities. So of course, Ms. Jno-Baptist, you know that question is targeted at you. Tell us a little bit something about that. Is that something that you support wholeheartedly?
The thing is, I do support it because it is already happening. Women is taking advantage of every single opportunity that they have. You see women as nurses, doctors, firemen, electricians, plumbers, everything. So that is something that I do support, and that is something I will continue to support and continue to encourage our young women to do. Because jobs are limited. Everybody knows that. So we need to grab every advantage and every opportunity that we have out there.
Perfect. And of course, it all comes back to youth participation.
Yes.
For sustainable development. I mean, our young people must take hold of what they have now if we are to have any hope of, a strong future in time to come.
Exactly.
I think we are approaching a break shortly, but just before you go to the break, probably Mr. Roach could, after when you come back from the break, of course, you could probably weigh in a little bit on policy implementation, and especially our youth policy. You made some interesting points on that. But we'll take a break now. I mean, we're on Youth Camera Action. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Welcome back, viewers. And we have a very interesting discussion, going on in studios here tonight. It's on, of course, youth policy and where certain policies can take our young people into the future and so on. And we have, as I mentioned before, Mr. Roach in studios, Chief Youth Development Officer. It's always an honor to have people of your caliber in studio with us, Mr. Roach. And coming out of last month's meeting, you mentioned a lot about policy and so on. Let's touch a little on policy and how our young people will develop from policies of sustainable development and stuff, just stuff set in writing that our young people can look to.
Okay. Yeah, what I want to do to basically set a basis for the discussion on the policy is to make reference to what we refer to as the regional youth profile of the ideal CARICOM youth. In other words, what would we want to be as the ideal young person in the Caribbean? And this came out of what we call the CARICOM Commission for Youth Development report, which was in 2010. And I will not mention all, I just want to mention some of the areas. It says, naturally charismatic, proactive, youth-strong leadership qualities, knowledgeable of country, Caribbean history, and world affairs, endowed with strong Caribbean identity, capable of living anywhere in the world, patriotic, ambitious, confident, well-rounded, well-informed, well-read, strong believer in culture, exposed to sport, cultural arts, creative, an entrepreneurial spirit, somewhat of a risk taker, exploring the world market in search of different avenues to advance self, country, and region, good deportment and attitude, a spiritual and moral dimension, tolerant and respectful of others, articulate, acting responsibly to benefit self, community, and society, understanding and embracing cultural differences. These are some of the characteristics we would use to define the ideal Caribbean youth. Some, okay? So you can imagine it's a high standard we are setting.
Right.
But what we are saying in developing a national youth policy or a youth policy for CARICOM youth, this is what we're hoping that policy will help to fuel, will help to bring about, okay? And in doing so, there are various stakeholders that have to play their parts. And central to that is the young people, okay? Our youth policy, the national youth policy in Dominica, was tabled in Parliament in 2004, in April 2004. And it was supported by this present administration. I remember it was presented by the then Honorable Minister for Youth, Honorable Vince Henderson.
Right.
And since then, a number of changes have taken place. In fact, one aspect of the national youth policy that we never really put in place was what we refer to as a youth commission. Now, the youth commission is supposed to ensure that the youth policy is adhered to and is followed by, for example, the youth division is responsible to implement the national youth policy. So the youth commission would ensure that the youth division implement the national youth policy on behalf of the young people.
So the youth division must now answer to another commission.
Exactly.
Who has to represent our
But the commission is to be instituted by a cabinet. Okay, so
that's a tricky one there.
Right, yeah, so that never really, so we are hoping that this time around, but what we are looking to do for the national youth policy is to adapt it to what we refer to as CDAP. CDAP is the CARICOM Youth Development Action Plan, which the CARICOM Secretariat is looking to implement throughout the region. In fact, the deadline that we're hoping that each country in the region would have revised or completed the process of their national youth policy would be by the 31st of December, this December 2015.
Okay.
What I can say is that coming out of the Commonwealth Youth Ministers meeting is that the Commonwealth Secretariat promised to assist Dominica in reviewing, providing the technical support, and to a certain extent some of the financial resources in reviewing our national youth policy. What I can say though is the Youth Development Division and a number of other agencies in Dominica have really been implementing the national youth policy and probably doing more than what is contained in the national youth policy. Especially when I go to such meetings and I listen to the other countries and I hear what is in place what facilities, what resources in place for the young people.
Right.
I usually say, well, Dominica is really ahead.
That is true.
You know,
So
it's
true.
really ahead.
Yeah.
For example, even the structure of our National Youth Policy, or National Youth Council, sorry,
Right.
where we have a National Youth Council that is now being emulated by a number of the other Caribbean countries. For example, you have some countries where the CARICOM Youth Ambassadors and the National Youth Council are two separate, and not only that, they are actually in loggerheads with each other.
Wow.
Okay,
Right.
in Dominica, we have a system in place where the CARICOM Youth Ambassadors are automatic members of the National Youth Council and work with the National Youth Council. I think we call them ex officio members.
Right,
Yes.
that's right.
And they work with the National Youth Council to address the needs of young people. You know, so we have a lot going for us in Dominica. And we have a division that is really committed to youth development. We also have a division that is working very closely with the National Youth Council.
Yes, that we can
In
attest to.
other countries, we have National Youth Council at loggerheads with their youth department.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, and for example, not long ago, that in that same meeting coming out from Barbados, the director of Youth in Barbados said he's having that difficult time with his with National Youth Council.
Oh,
you know, so I mean, there's a lot in place for us. But what we really need to do is again revise the National Youth Policy, see the areas of weaknesses that we need to address, and with the technical support from both the CARICOM Secretariat and the Commonwealth Secretariat, that we can really put together a 21st century, a new millennium type of youth policy to address the needs of our young people.
So basically, Dominica can, and like everything else, lead the charge.
Yes.
With, you know, implementing those sort of characteristics in our young people.
Oh, yes.
So policy implementation, right?
Yeah,
Yes.
because for example, we have two programs. One that is that was awarded as the best practice in the Commonwealth. That is the Dominica Youth Business Trust.
Ah, okay.
We have the Youth Skills Training Program. That was a tracer study, not a tracer study, a case study was done on the Youth Skills Training Program and was recommended by the United Nations as a best practice that other countries should follow. Okay, so if Dominica, a small country like Dominica, has two best practice from two international institutions, I mean, we're ahead. I mean,
where we should
be.
Yeah.
You know. So it's just a matter of building on what we have.
Perfect. And my younger people, my ambassadors, I'm pretty sure you agree with Mr. Roach on those points.
Oh, yes. Speaking to the other delegates from other countries, I came to realize that, wow, our country is way ahead. They're bigger than us, yes, but our country is way ahead when it comes to youth development. Because a lot of recommendations that they give, we already have that implemented. Whereas you would hear the other delegates saying they don't even know who their youth minister is and they don't work with their youth officer. Mr. Roach always in our face, even when we don't want him there. And Mrs. Charles is always there. So a lot of things, when I give my recommendation, like telling them when they ask about bringing out the news of young people out there, I give recommendations on what we do in Dominica, and they actually accepted it, like a media team.
Wow.
So we do a lot of things in Dominica that they are envious of, and I'm very proud of my country and of my young people.
So basically, where they going, we done left already.
We left already, so it's just for us to go further so they can follow us. So we just need to go further. Don't say, oh, we're there already. No, we're not there as yet. We need to go further and further and further.
Right.
That is what
Which is something we should always be careful. I mean, complacency is a dangerous thing.
Oh, yes.
You know, this procrastination, all kinds of other evils that will keep our young people back, you know. But Mr. Anselm, I haven't heard enough from you. You know, tell us something about, you know, what the comments Mr. Roach shared. I mean, of course, you must agree we are way ahead, we are where we should be. What suggestions do you have, you know, to take us to where we need to be in the future?
Okay, in addition to what Mr. Roach said, I just wanted to touch on the recommendations that we came off with from the Youth Forum. Some of the recommendations that the youth came up with is that the strengthening of youth policies in countries where they're existing and the implementation how should I say? Yes, the implementation of in those countries where there are none. This was one of the policies we touched on. They also touched on the ministers giving assistance in terms of entrepreneurship to youth in their country to ensure, because we all know that unemployment is a major problem across the region and across the globe, so that they ask that the ministers give assistance to young entrepreneurs to get them started and to also assist them in employing other young persons so that we will help deal with the unemployment issue. And then the recommendation which came forth from this was that we cater on our councils for youth with disabilities, so that no one is left behind, that all youth feel that they are included in the decision making and the youth development of our country.
Wonderful. Those are some very exciting and very interesting suggestions, I must say. And they sound very sustainable. I mean, of course, we are all about sustainable development. We are all about, moving our young people forward. And I'd probably like to stick a pin in those suggestions for now, and as we're about to take a break. But we'll come back in a little while, can discuss a little more. And we have a very special guest to join us later tonight, shortly before the show ends. Our young people will, I hope they'll be pleased at seeing this dynamic young man's face. We'll be right back. We'll take a short break. Stay tuned, please. Welcome back, viewers. We apologize for that disruption you heard. We're back difficulties on our part. But we're back with our guest in studio. As I said, we have a special guest to join us in a little while. We'll see him in just a bit. But coming out from the discussions, with Mr. Roach and Ms. Jno-Baptist, we were discussing a little policy implementation and so on, and we started off the show with discussions on youth participation. And I posed the question to our youth ambassadors that how they think our young people can more actively participate, and how they think we can probably empower our young people more. And this might be an opportune time to introduce our new guest. She is the president of the National Youth Council of Dominica, Mr. Jaiziah Benoit, a stalwart for youth empowerment in his own right. A man who continues to work toward the development of young people. So we'll hear from him as well on this topic of youth participation in national development. Mr. Roach, as Chief Youth Development Officer, your name, your title says a lot. How do you see young people, actively participating or participating even more in building our country, especially coming out of this meeting in April?
Okay, well, as we said, the theme focused a lot on youth participation.
Right.
And the theme really was saying that youth participation is at the heart of national development, which is really the essence of the meeting. And we focus on a number of areas where young people can play an important role. In fact, that is why at that meeting there was a separate youth forum where the young people themselves met and deliberate on the issues. In fact, I must say there was a certain time when the youth came back in the General Assembly to report back to the youth ministers. There was a little heat. There was a little heat in terms of the young people making certain demands and the youth ministers responding. I remember one particular youth minister was actually very, very aggressive, and I personally, to a certain extent, I took some offense to the fact that you're addressing young people and you need to respect young people. I felt that way about it. And but the young people were very straightforward, and they said it like it is, and they said, well, this is what we're asking. And so it shows that when young people are brought on board to participate in the decision-making process, that it can really prick some people.
Yeah.
And what is important for me is that when young people speak, you listen to them, you hear them, because whatever you're going to put in place, whether as a policy maker, a youth minister, a director of youth, whatever you're going to put in place for the young people, at the end of the day, is the young people who are going to take advantage of it. And if the young people say we do not want that, they do not want that.
Simple.
Okay?
Yes.
And for example, I mean, one area that was a little sensitive was the structures of the youth policies. To what extent the structures are really representative of the young people. If we say there's a National Youth Council, is it really national? Are all the executive members from one community, from one district?
Yes.
How is the National Youth Council selected? Okay? I know, for example, in one of the countries, to select a youth ambassador, it's almost like going to the polls to elect a government. You understand? So that's how serious young people take their representation. You know, even the issue of Jaiza being a senator and being president of the National Youth Council, issues like that came up. Not long ago, I got a call from the United Nations.
Right.
When I said that, well, with that same workshop that we have to go to, and I said, "Is Senator Benoit?" He said, "You mean the president of the National Youth Council is a senator?" So then they asked me, what is the relationship between the National Youth Council and the government, whether it's a government entity. I told them, no, it's an NGO by itself. It gets a support from the government, subvention, and so on. So I had to explain to them how the president of the National Youth Council, any executive member of the National Youth Council, can be a senator.
Right.
And I made reference to the Constitution. I said the Constitution does not go against it. In fact, the Constitution is encouraging, because that is what we are trying to do, is to encourage the participation of young people at all levels.
That's right, yeah.
Including the highest levels, okay? And for records, we can go back from the history and see that a number of our politicians passed through the National Youth Council, okay? So if we are preparing our young people for the highest position, why is it that when they are on the road to that we think that they should no longer be affiliated to the institution that actually got them there?
That makes sense.
So, I mean, it's something that Jason and I have spoken about.
Right.
And I think it's something that, in fact, the Commonwealth Secretary was very supportive of it. They said that is the idea. In fact, when the person from the UN called me and asked me, I said, what do you prefer? For the National Youth Council not to be represented in Parliament or to be represented in Parliament? Which is better? Which one that you think the young people will benefit more from? Right. To have no voice in Parliament or to have at least a voice in Parliament? And she said, Mr. Roach, I see where you're coming from.
Perfect.
So it's just my take on it, you know, my take on it.
And I think a few people may share your views as well, Mr. Roach, in particular in relation to that particular situation, and where young people and their contributions to national development is concerned. Ms. Jno-Baptist, I mean, you are one of those advocates who we tend to hear a lot, and you know, who encourages young people to always take a stake in national development and to always have their hands dirty in getting in moving their country forward. What suggestions do you have for young people in terms of, you know, getting their country up and running and getting their country on the right track? We already mentioned that Dominica is already leading the way, where young people and their own development is concerned, and you know, moving forward. What's your suggestions to our young people out there?
Well, before I go on to my suggestion, let me touch on something that Mr. Roach said. Okay. That at the meeting things actually got kind of heated after we left our own meeting, the youth left our own meeting, because we felt like, you know, this is our time to hear. It is our time for you to hear our voice. It's it's no longer what you all want for the youth. It's what we want for ourselves. We know what it takes to get the empowerment that we need. Right. We know what we need. We know what tomorrow will bring for us. You know, so when we came back, like Mr. Roach was saying, one of the recommendations of the young people in the Caribbean is that a member of the National Youth Council sits in Parliament as a senator and they hear our voice.
Right.
Or else, they should know that the young people lead the majority of the population. We are 60%.
Right.
Everything now is for us. We are the leaders. We
the
are the
ones
now,
who must-
actually.
Yeah,
We are the
exactly.
now. And that is what
Exactly.
I want young people to know. We are the now. Whatever ideas that you have, bring it out there. Let people know what you want. Let them know that you need assistance. You need support. Because if they don't support the young people, what are they supporting? They're supporting nothing, because we are the majority of society. You know, and that is what I want young people to know. Whatever ideas that you all have, do not hold it in. And that is something that I face every day as a challenge as the president of my district council. I only get the ideas when I go to them, and that is what I want to let them know. Don't wait for people to come to you.
Right.
Bring your
right,
ideas
right.
out there.
Perfect. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. And that's the spirit we like, in the way where our youth leaders are concerned. I see Mr. Bino across there. beaming away. And I'll allow you a few seconds to add your voice to this discussion before we take another quick break and come back for some more topics.
Well, I just want to say good night to you, your guests, and to your viewing audience, and to say it's an inspiring program so far, and just honored to be a part of, you know, your cadre of guests this evening.
And it's an honor to have you, Senator Binois.
Pleasure.
And we see the timer counting down a little bit. We're going to a break in a while, right? But before you come back, I would just probably like to put this question out there, and we can think about it a little bit. Are we satisfied with where our young people are right now as it relates to national development? We'll take a break right now. We'll come back shortly. Welcome back, viewers. And before we went to our break, I put the question to my guests whether or not they were satisfied with how our young people contribute to national development. And we heard a lot from our CARICOM Youth Ambassador, our female CARICOM Youth Ambassador, Ms. Jno-Baptist. We heard a lot from our Chief Youth Development Officer. Now we have the President of the National Youth Council here with us. I mean, he has his hands dirty in many different youth organizations, in many different institutions. So I think he is very well versed to speak on behalf of our young people. So we'll probably take a chance to listen to Mr. Binois for some time.
Thank you, Mr. John, and I think your question is quite pertinent. If I were to answer in my own humble opinion, I would say I'm very proud of Dominica's standing in terms of youth participation. Right now, as Mr. Roach mentioned earlier on in the program, we have achieved great successes, but I still believe we cannot claim success in terms of reaching the ultimate level. We have made significant strides, particularly over the past several years, as a council and as a youth movement. And I think what we need to do is to continue to identify those best practices, as Mr. Roach also spoke about, and see how we can get them emulated across the region to better understand their relevance and further define them at the national level. I believe that the summary report by Mr. Roach is very comprehensive and pertinent, reading for every young person in the country. In fact, we intend to upload this document onto the NYC website so it can be openly accessible.
That'll be a great idea.
There are several aspects of that document, I think, just to highlight in particular with respect to the youth policy. That was a significant objective for us early on as an executive, and it's good to see that level of will at the level of the ministers across the region, going to take up that challenge. So it shows, as Kerahia was saying, that we can be forward thinking as youth and identify the need, to take the policy more seriously, to revise it with a renewed impetus to actually implement it. So I think that was very positive. You also saw an endorsement of the Caribbean Regional Youth Council, which is very important.
Yeah.
About 15 years ago, persons were aspiring for the Caribbean Federation of Youth, and that idea sort of got, you know, lost along the way. But now we can see that we have found our footing once again in the Caribbean Regional Youth Council. Dominica is represented at the executive level, and so once again, I think we are on the right track. We just need to continue to support the work of the Youth Development Division, Ministry of Youth, and work as civil society, central government, and private sector to keep Dominica's youth as shining examples of the ideal Caribbean youth.
Splendid, splendid, and very encouraging words coming there from our NYCD president. Now, Mr. Roach, I'm not sure if you share the same sentiments or if you have anything else to add, but you've been working with young people for quite some time. As you've come through the years, I mean, how happy are you with where all your, not necessarily where our young people are, but what they're doing right now? Because I mean, we can be in a good position, right? That could also be testament to the work that was done by young people before them. In terms of the work and the effort that our young people today are putting into their own development, their own country's development, how happy or how satisfied are you with that, if satisfied at all?
Yeah, I would like to answer your question by saying that satisfaction is always in relation to a standard. And whether it's a low standard or high standard or mediocre standard, at the Youth Development Division, we set very high standards. I set very high standards for myself.
We can attest to that.
So if I say I'm satisfied, I am satisfied against, it would be against the highest standard. So that means there's so much that we ourselves still have to do, and so much that the young people can do. And and is a question of, is it that the opportunities that the young people are not taking advantage of it? Or is it that young people have not been positioned to take advantage of these opportunities? So if I'm to speak to being satisfied, I would have to speak that I'm satisfied against a number of parameters. Whether the enabling environment is there, yes it is. Okay?
Yes.
So I'm satisfied that the enabling environment is there. And then, and I say that in reference to what is even happening to our neighbors, where you interact with our neighbors, I interact with other directors of youth, with other young people. I do a lot of work with the Commonwealth Secretariat in the region. And I see that there is so much that Dominican young people have access to. Okay? So whether I'm satisfied that we have reached where we should reach, we still have a lot of work to do. Because, for example, as we said that we would want to have a young person in parliament, we would also want to have our own youth parliament. We would want that every board, every government board, every statutory board, there's a young person on every statutory board. I remember when we started the whole thing that young people should be on village councils and city councils and urban councils and Carib councils. And if we go across Dominica, we will see that is what is happening. In fact, a number of the chairpersons of those councils are run by young people. What I want to see is that a number of those government boards, or government should make it mandatory. The national youth policy should state that every government board should have a young person.
Between the age of 18 and 35 or something like that.
That thing. You know, so, and you know, I want to see our young people, particularly our young men, because we say that our young men are marginalized. I would really like to see our young men take their rightful place in society, because our population now shows that they are more male than female. The last census, okay? Over 1,000 more males than females. Okay, I think the exact number is 1,529 more males than females.
That is something
now,
else.
This is a very interesting demographic.
Yes.
Okay? Very, very interesting. Not many countries will go in the world for you to have more men than women. Okay? So our men really need to take their rightful place in society. But we know where we see them. And this is not where we want to see them.
Not at all.
So if I say I'm satisfied, I'm saying I'm satisfied against these parameters.
And those are some very interesting comments, Mr. Roach. We always get some insightful words of wisdom from you. And that is indeed food for thought. I mean, I hope our young people in there are taking heed and listening intently to our guests in studio tonight. I mean, these are very interesting comments that are being made. But I mean, in the interest of time, I'll probably just jump across to Ms. Jno-Baptist and ask her to weigh in a little on the question I posed a while ago. Are you happy with where our young people are?
Well, what I can say is I am happy and I'm proud. Why am I happy and proud? Because every time I turn on the TV, the radio, or the internet, I see another young Dominican excelling in the schools, excelling with a program, excelling in this, excelling in that, enterprise. I am proud. But am I satisfied? No. Okay. Why am I not satisfied? Because I know the young people have the potential, Mr. John. They have the potential and they have the ideas. Right. They have the strength and they have the goals. They have the opportunities, but they're not taking it up. We still see the gangs, we still see the drug use, we still see violence, we still see those things out there, and that is why I'm not satisfied. I know that a country is like a bucket with a hole that you're trying to fill water. But it's up to us to decide how fast this water is flowing. How fast this water is flowing, and it's up to us to patch that bucket. And we as young people, it is our time. Since we are the majority that I keep repeating, we are the majority. If we fix this, trust me, and we need to do it so that the next generation will benefit from it and will continue. And that is the goal of the National Youth Council. So I am proud of everybody out there who is working towards development and empowerment, but I am not satisfied because not every young people out there is doing it.
All right, not every young. Perfect, perfect, perfect. And Mr. Roach, I'd probably like to ask you, one final question before we welcome our male curriculum youth ambassador back on set. And I see something that came out of that meeting in terms of youth employment and entrepreneurship, right? You mentioned a while ago that you really are not satisfied with probably what our young people are doing with what is available to them. How does that, translate into youth employment and entrepreneurship, and what suggestions do you have for the young people out there? Just advise the young people on the opportunities, the real opportunities that are there for them to grab onto. The youth division always has trainings every now and again. So take the opportunity, to probably edify our young people out there.
Yeah. I can tell you when I just started working with the youth development division, that young people were actually coming to the offices and asking what is available for me to do. Now, we are spending thousands of dollars advertising and inviting young people to programs. And on top of that, we have to send the officers to their homes to pull them out of their homes to come and participate in those programs. These are opportunities, and let me tell you, there's evidence that the young people who come through our programs get employed. It's not just get employed, but in terms of the whole formation, their holistic development, there's evidence. And every day we walk the streets, people tell us, Mr. Roach, do you know it's because of that program that I am, that kind of thing. And we would want a number for young people to tell us those things. I hate when I walk down, I'm from Granby, everybody, and I hate when I walk down the road and I see a number of young, particularly young men, sit down by the roadside, and you know what they're doing.
Oh, yes.
Okay? Broad daylight, no matter what time I mean, I'm saying there are too many opportunities that our young people can take advantage of. And to see that a number of our young men are wasting away, it hurts me.
Doing unmentionable things.
Okay, and then they are saying, but how come the women are doing so well? Well, the women are taking advantage of those programs that we are offering.
And that is a very interesting point. We'll stick a pin right there and we'll have one of our NYCD executive members stick it up in our next segment. Mr. Roach, we thank you very much for joining us on Youth Camera Action tonight. It is always a pleasure to hear from you as it relates to youth development and youth empowerment. I mean, the National Youth Council can attest to the level of work that you continue to put in on a regular basis and the standard that you want for our young people. We do wish, we hope, and we pray that our young people out there can grasp onto that.
Thank you very much. You're welcome.
And thank you for being here. My other NYCD executive members will be right back. We know a very big meeting happened earlier this week, and we'd probably like to touch on that a little bit as it relates to certain youth issues. Stay tuned. We'll be right back on Youth Camera Action.
It's movies, entertainment, sports, news, travel, cuisine, and arts. Pink TV is here. With over 80 great channels to choose from to satisfy your entertainment needs no matter what. Watch all your pay-per-view programs with ease. Tier services included Fox Soccer Plus, Speed TV, and Tennis. Watch quality local programming like the Channel 5 News and Ion Sports, all from the comfort of your home in full digital and HD. The thrill, the scare, and the emotion. Marpin 2K for Pink TV, bringing value home because life is better with Marpin.
Welcome back, Dominica, especially our young people out there tuned into Youth Camera Action. Now we have on set, I mean, it's fully NYCD executive. I mean, we don't have all our executive members, of course, but we are well represented here tonight with our CARICOM Youth Ambassadors and our President, Senator Jaiza Binwa. Now, earlier this week, the National Youth Council of Dominica sat in a very interesting and thought-provoking meeting with His Excellency President Charles Angelo Savre. Some very interesting points came from that discussion. And I'd probably like Mr. Binwa to start the ball rolling on that. I mean, just give the people out there an overview of what really happened and some of the key points that you probably like to take out from that meeting and put out in public.
Well, I'd just first like to seize this opportunity to thank His Excellency, the President of the Commonwealth of Dominica, Charles Angelo Savre, for affording the Council Executive the opportunity of an audience with himself.
Right.
And as you pointed out, very pertinent discussion on several major topics affecting young persons and indeed some key points for guidance to the National Youth Council, in particular with respect to the unfortunate scourge re child sexual abuse. He gave us some key insight as to what are some of the recommendations we can channel through the National Coalition. That is to refine our approach and achieve goals that are more smart, and therefore we can have a better chance of achieving them. Also, we spoke on the issue of male achievement, and I think I echo the sentiments of His Excellency, the male CARICOM Youth Ambassador, that we need to place emphasis on entrepreneurship and make our young men shine as leaders and as role models, particularly when it comes to job creation and employment. And apart from that, we also touch on the need to focus on those that are not as fortunate as others. And in particular, we have taken it upon ourselves as a council to pay close attention to one of the President's charities that is in collaboration, in conjunction with Operation Youth Quick. And so we'll be exploring how we as a council can contribute to the work surrounding that organization and uplift the lives of the young people there. And I'm sure my counterparts here can also express some of their views in respect to the audience. But it was a very productive meeting.
Indeed it was. I probably can attest to that as well myself. Now, to our ambassadors, I mean, going to try to merge a little bit the two topics, the meeting with His Excellency and the meeting that you're working from in Antigua, as it relates to youth participation. But in part, we're going to try to marginalize the genders a little bit. Mr. Male CARICOM Youth Ambassador, we saw one of the suggestions from the ministers themselves at that meeting for young men to take a more active role in conflict resolution, right? And we do remember that was touched on with the President yesterday. Just talk to us a little about that. I mean, what can you say to our young men out there, and what do we expect from our young men out there now that probably some of them might be hearing these words for the first time?
Okay, what we would like to say to our young men out there is that they are the fathers of our next generation, that they should start setting that example, that they wouldn't like the young boys being involved in negative activities. If this is what they are doing today, this is what our young boys are going to see, and therefore that is what they will emulate, and in the future that would not be good for future generation and for economy on a whole. So that is the message we would like to send to them, that they should engage in more positive activities. They should also take advantage of opportunities that are given to them, because we heard our young men crying about the unemployment issue and saying that there are no jobs, but there are opportunities given to them by the Youth Development Division and also other agencies that afford them opportunities to learn skills and so forth, but they do not take advantage of those opportunities. So we'd like them to grab those opportunities and get themselves occupied so that they will have less time to engage in negative activities.
And do you think probably that might be the reason we have so many more young women succeeding or seem to be succeeding a little more than the young men themselves. Is that something you probably like to link with that?
But yes, I would link it to that because we see our young women taking advantage of every opportunity that is given to them. We see them going in fields, unconventional fields we are not accustomed to seeing women taking advantage of. We see them going into those fields and our young men are just sitting idly by doing nothing. So I believe that yes, this does contribute.
Basically, the way going forward should be no job is a man or woman's job. All jobs are available for every person, right?
A job is a job.
A job is a job, right? Ms. Jno-Baptist, I mean, your thoughts on that particular topic?
Yes, so one thing I can say is, again, thank you to His Excellency the President for inviting us to a meeting. And we did not only listen to what he had to say, but he also listened to what we had to say. And one of the areas covered was the fact that we highlight not only Dominicans, but we as society on a whole highlight more of the negative. We praise more of the negative. We follow more of the negative than the positive. You would see a video of a fight. Right. 5,000 people comment. You would see a young person do something positive. 3 persons comment. Now, what does that say to young people out there? We highlight more of the negative. The negative is what gets the attention than the positive. And that is what the president asked us. So we need to focus more on the positive than the negative. And there's something also that I captured from speaking to my young people, well, the young people in my district, is that what happened over the years when it comes to women and men, we placed so much emphasis on women. Women, you all have to do this. Women, you all have to do that. Women have to do this, and boys have to be leaders. Boys now want to take up the leadership role. So much emphasis have been placed on them being the leaders. If a leadership role is not available, they don't want it. And for women now, we place so much emphasis on you all have to go out there and do everything because you all have been battered and beaten. Women do everything. We need to understand that logic. Right. People pick up whatever we say. We take things literal. So we need now to focus on both women. Yes, women have been sexually abused. Yes, all that. But we have to place emphasis on our youth. We are not going to separate them anymore. Right. It's just one body that we are trying to develop. No male, no female.
It's all one body. We are all one set of young people. We all make up that 60%, right?
Yes, we all do.
Perfect. We'll just take some quick announcements before we dash out of here. I mean, we're running out of time very quickly. First of all, I want to thank our guests tonight. You all were very interactive, very insightful with your comments. And just maybe 2 short announcements. The Western District Youth Council is hosting a leaders camp the weekend 5th to 7th of June. So we invite our youth group leaders to take note and take heed and send in the names of your young people who you'd like to be at that camp as soon as possible. Also, our friends from Point Michelle, Lapwet Stand Up Point Michelle Development Committee will be having a discussion, so to speak, the untold stories by loved ones they left behind. That about wraps up our announcements. That about wraps up our show. We say good night to you and all viewers outside there. This was Youth Camera Action.